In other words, I've changed the subject.
So, in other words, then the location is very
In
important.
other words, I have no responsibilities here whatsoever.
In other words, she's just too good to be true.
In other words, by their very silence, there was a cover-up.
In other words, we didn't know why we were there.
In other words, we are 30 feet high in this aircraft.
In other words.
In other words, normal.
In other words, torture him?
More or less.
In other words, you need to forget about all the normal rules that apply to both college and society.
Much too beautiful to be left alone.
In other words, you've changed the subject.
In other words, I've changed the subject.
1971. You understand?
Yes, sir. So, in other words, then the location is very important.
Not all important, but essential.
Things, backup, whatever.
In other words, I have no responsibilities here whatsoever.
Right.
My kind of case.
I believe there is no Darby Shaw. In other words, she's just too good to be true.
She almost is.
I don't talk, but
the message was clear, though. In other words, by their very silence, there was a cover-up.
well, they didn't urge us to come forward and tell the truth.
Ate sand and threw up. That's how desperate we were. In other words, we didn't know why we were there. We didn't know what we were looking for. The entire thing seemed completely absurd.
Professor, why don't you come on up front here?
In other words, we are 30 feet high in this aircraft.
Strap yourself in right there. You ought to be able to see just great.
And every other guy in the neighborhood. A bum, in other words. Well, she had a boy, too.
Dr. Tanny says the x-rays are negative. In other words, normal.
The recipe for his formula.
In other words, torture him?
More or less.
Discussing a brand new way to look at a fraternity. In other words, you need to forget about all the normal rules that apply to both college and society. Because this is a very big idea, my friends.
Behind bars. I can't just pick up and go that easy.
In other words, you thought she wasn't gonna make it out here and she'd come crawling up back to you, so why bother to pack, right?
But Hilda's killer wore a long black habit. In other words, a priest.
So much for eyes, but as long as you bring up age, how old are you?
Oh, no,
Because
not,
you brought it
in
up.
other words,
no, I'm curious.
In other words, you're not that you're ugly. That's what I'm saying.
Easy.
Are they?
No, sir.
In other words, there is no evidence whatsoever to support that this fantastical conversation.
Up and bring her back down again, safe and sound.
In other words, you did it to get laid.
I suppose that's not entirely un...
Or, in other words, beware of the Hun in the sun, who, for reasons best known to himself, has confined his...
How did you know that?
Okay, I saw her.
She didn't see you, in other words?
I saw her out there, and I was curious.
With your child?
A child?
Yes. In other words, would your ex-wife ever leave Sean Noakes alone with your child?
There would be no reason.
The privilege of investigating combat medals for our victorious army.
In other words, we've been passed over.
I prefer to think of it as a second chance, Ned.
I've been introduced to hundreds of women, yet I've never married. In other words, no one's ever talked me into anything. Does that answer your question?
No, sir.
In other words, it's over.
I guess so. For the moment.
To be free, to rule and to fight. In other words, to lead a man's existence. Women are no more than a...
Changing experience, and I think we need it. In other words, I don't want you to leave.
He's gonna have a kid in 6 weeks.
In other words, well, you're trying to tell me that I'm just sort of a lightweight. I don't know what you are yet, Mr. Bowen.
Without losing the overall aesthetic. In other words, the atmosphere will not be painted on the walls. Well, let me give you an example.
I can get you guys in using a brokerage pocket account. In other words, liquidate 2 bricks of cocaine and park it right here. Now, with the historical performance of the fund, that's going to double every...
Words, we ain't seen a dime's profit from the lot of them.
Not in other words, James. Those are the words.
Incomes, we got our salaries.
Absorption for their brain tissue. In other words, we see what they see. They don't feel any pain.
Congratulations. Tonight you were wonderful.
In other words, let's take all the old army game. Oh, Neville,
They tell me the army's caught up with you.
Dominique is here.
In other words, the story begins all over again.
In other words, Marshal, you owe me $200.
And only my father will be shot. In other words, your simple statement of fact is we are lost in any case because we were generous enough.
That's how serious it is.
In other words, I'm fucked.
In so many words, yes.
That is correct.
In other words, it acts as a drug.
I object to the form of question.
It acts as a drug on the body.
Use this if you want to, but keep in mind now, I did 4 banks with a note. In other words, you don't need the gun. I never liked guns, man. They're vulgar.
Manage the various departments. In other words, no Jews or Negroes and very few Catholics. And that's only because I'm a Catholic.
Ate many of these last homages.
Oh, yes.
In other words, you have buried a lot of people.
Well, yes.
Now, what would you say is the cheapest you ever? That there were signs of scorching around the wound. In other words, the gun had been placed very close to our head before being fired. That is correct.
So, in other words, you kept on winning.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
At any time during this...
In other words, at 266 megahertz.
In other words, all of these folks were conceived and brought forth by the normal biological function